50 FM 99.3 KNSI. Time for another edition of Taking You Home with VoigtJohnson Real Estate. Hear the show every Thursday morning at 7:23. Saturday again at 7:50 here on KNSI. And remember, start that home search at VoigtJohnson.com. Brandon, good morning.
Hey, Bob, how are you?
I am going to make it as always. So, if I'm not mistaken, the spring market has already popped, right?
Yeah, we're seeing more homes come on the market. We're seeing buyers that have been maybe just watching over the winter months now start to be active buyers, and it's creating that seasonal spring rush to the market.
Okay, you have brought with you a question from one of your clients, right?
Yeah.
Okay, may I?
Absolutely.
Here we go. We are looking at making an offer on a home that already has 5 offers on it. We had friends who bought a home that agreed to pay more than any other offer. Is that really an option? If so, how does that work? To me, this is one of the biggest mysteries when you get into competitive offers. How much do I know how do I know how much I should try to get in the game? Do I go 5%? Do I go $5,000? Do I go $1,000? How do I know?
And when you're in a multiple offer situation, whether you're the seller or a buyer, I think this is where the importance of an experienced, educated real estate agent is paramount.
You bet.
Because there's so much wisdom in a scenario like this that can be gleaned and just from experience, not only historically, but in the current environment with interest rates. So to that question, what you're referring to is what we call escalation clauses. And so they generally go something like, we as a buyer are willing to pay $1,000 over any competing offer, and then up to a certain amount.
Okay.
There can be a lot of unintended consequences in doing that, and you really have to rely on the agent that's drafting that language that they know what they're doing, and when they write an escalation clause.
And when you sit down with your clients, right, and this is my home, this is what I want, okay, we're going to write this offer up,
Yep.
and you're getting into the escalation clauses, is there a formula that you guys typically use, or does it all depend upon the buyer, how much they really can afford to spend?
So if I'm working with a buyer, the question I'm asking then is, how much do you want this home? What is the likelihood? Do you like this home or do you love it?
Yeah.
And will you be absolutely crushed if you don't get it? At the end of the day, my advice to buyers is pick a number that you feel good about if you get the call that the home is yours.
Yeah.
And pick a number that you feel good about if you get the call that you didn't get it. Meaning, and that's easier said than done, right?
Right.
But when you feel that regret, like, oh, I paid too much, or, oh, I wish I would have went a little bit more. Try and put yourself in that place with both results and see. That's the advice I give. But the biggest thing is you want to know, like, how many other offers are there. There's, can be indications.
Can you ask that question?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And if I'm a buyer's agent, I'm asking, what specific timing, what are things that aren't on the listing that is important to
that we don't know.
Trying to glean off of my relationships with the other agents, as well as tell me more that my people might be willing to offer in addition to price. But when they're escalating the purchase price, a lot of times we just had an offer on one of our listings that the language did not account for seller paid closing costs.
Okay.
So a lot of times the intent probably is that you'll pay more, $1,000 more than the net, but you got to draft that as well too. So at the end of the day, you want to be sure that the price is not getting escalated in a manner that you didn't intend to.
Okay.
For instance, this has never happened to us, but I've seen the cases where an escalation clause says they'll pay $1,000 over the highest price up to a certain price, and you might it might land at a price where it didn't go to that full escalation number,
right?
And so you think you've agreed to a price. A week later, another backup offer comes in, and then escalates that price there. Well, that probably wasn't the intention, but by the letter of the contract. So that's just one scenario that can happen. And there's timing involved if you have sunset dates. So it's very clear that when we talk about sunset dates, escalation clauses in our office, is that we are removing any language that could potentially still change the price and just countering it with a flat price, flat terms. We can use the escalation clause to arrive at a price,
Okay.
but once we've arrived at a price, we need to draft it in a manner that it's set in stone.
How many opportunities do I get to counter another offer? Do I only have one shot?
As a seller, when you put something in writing, you cannot counter in writing multiple people at once. So if I'm counseling a seller, I'll say, okay, which offer, and there could be lots of terms, closing date, closing costs,
Yeah.
inspections, non-inspections.
Right.
Let's select an offer that we want to work with first,
Yeah.
that we want to maybe counter certain terms in there. Let's engage with one party, and then see where that goes. If it doesn't go, then we'll pull back and then maybe move on to another party.
Sure.
But you only want to be countering one party at a time, because you can't sell your house multiple times if multiple
Gotcha.
people accept your counters.
Okay, sure. All right. So I got a house that was built in the 60s. If I'm going to sell it, it's been grandfathered in, electrical, plumbing, all that kind of stuff. Everything is okay because
Sure.
I've lived there. But now I want to sell my house, and I've got to do all of these updates to make it within code. Do I, or can I sell it as is? And is that another factor in this whole equation?
It can be. To answer your first question, can you sell it as is? Absolutely.
Okay.
You are not required to have your house up to code to sell it.
Okay.
You do need, if there's something that's detrimental, i.e. work was done without permits, you do need to disclose those items.
Sure,
So
sure.
if you know that the electrical, there's issues with the electrical that may have been satisfactory, we need to, within reason, you need to disclose that. But
Yeah.
there's nothing to prevent you from selling a home that doesn't meet the current
Yeah.
code. There's
Gotcha.
a lot of homes built, to your example, in the 60s.
Sure.
It's not going to meet the current code by any means. You can still obviously sell that.
Once again, you are really illustrating the reason to deal with you folks, the reason to have that relationship with the realtor. Man, this can really get messy.
Yeah, and again, it only gets messy when mistakes are made.
Confusing would be a better word.
Absolutely. And so our job is to just point out red flags.
Yeah.
There's always, the potential for pitfalls in a real estate transaction. Our experience, we've seen a lot to try and prevent those pitfalls from happening.
Taking you home with VoigtJohnson Real Estate. Catch it every Thursday morning at 7:23, Saturday morning at 7:50 here on KNSI. How do we work with you at Voigt Johnson?
VoigtJohnson.com or 320-774-2400.
Brandon, thank you.
Thanks, Bob.